Good evening. I'm Katerina Georgieva. This is CBC Windsor News. Thanks for joining us. We begin with the ongoing trade war with a new threat. Donald Trump says he's going to impose 35% tariffs on some goods imported from Canada starting August 1st. The announcement was made in a letter on social media addressed to Prime Minister Mark Carney Thursday night. In response, Industry Minister Mélanie Joly says Canada needs to further strengthen trade relations with trusted partners.
We need to make sure that while the U.S. is closing its market and really taking its own path regarding protectionism, that we, as a stable and democratic country, continue to have open markets, including with the EU.
The hike is expected for goods already hit with a 25% import tax. According to the White House, free trade compliant goods would be exempt, and Canadian energy and potash stays at 10%. The original trade deal deadline of July 21st had been agreed upon by both countries. The Prime Minister says he will work towards an agreement by the revised August 1st deadline. And he's calling a cabinet meeting for Tuesday to focus on negotiations with the U.S. Carney says Ottawa will defend workers and businesses amid the latest threats. And our city continues to be caught in the crossfire of this dispute, with job loss numbers painting a stark picture. Chris Ensing explains.
Windsor has Canada's highest unemployment rate. That might sound familiar.
Windsor's unemployment level hit 9.1% last month. It's the highest in the country once again.
That was a year ago. Today, now, the unemployment rate sits at 11.2%. What's different? U.S. President Donald Trump and his American tariffs that are pushing unemployment rates up.
We had an economic trade task force meeting on Wednesday and, heard from the various industries, and it wasn't a real rosy picture around the table.
Companies are holding on to capital, an uncertain trading partner causing people to put investments on pause.
And until and unless there is that resolution, it's easier to just hide your cash underneath the couch or underneath your mattress than it is to start spending that.
While work is drying up now, trade certainty could spur sudden shifts.
Everyone's just going, let's just wait, let's just hold on. And we're not going to issue new contracts. We're not going to issue new work until we have clarity as to what this looks like. And I think at that point, I could see, that those numbers flipping quite quickly.
Unemployment numbers were high before, blamed in part on population growth. Employers were creating jobs, but just not as fast as people were moving here. Last month, for the first time in 4 years, the population stopped growing, and Windsor lost nearly 3,000 manufacturing, transportation, and warehousing jobs. Experts say men between 24 and 54 are hardest hit.
We're quite concerned about sort of what's going on there. Because we're having this sort of male unemployment crisis in our area. Female unemployment is still occurring, let's be clear. It's just occurring at much more of the general rates of unemployment.
Inside Windsor auto plants, Canadian Ford workers make the engine that powers North America's best-selling vehicle, the F-150. Work continues, but spending has changed.
You can see the uncertainty with everything that's happening around us. And in my eyes, I believe that's why we have the unemployment where it's at. I believe people are actually putting money in their pockets, including Ford workers. Because, when you don't know what's going to happen, you have to protect yourself, especially with the cost of living today.
Union leaders, business groups, and experts agree that this region is ground zero for trade war job losses and will need targeted supports from upper levels of government to survive whatever comes next. Chris Ensing, CBC News, Windsor.
Colette Kennedy now with our first look at weather. Colette, Mother Nature dropped a lot of rain today in advance of all that heat.
Yeah, that's right. We have had some of that activity rolling through. And so our temperature, it's warming up, 28 degrees right now, but it's the humidex value and what it feels like, 37. And that's the kind of thing we're going to be dealing with for the next several days. The high humidex value, you're talking about 38 to 42, and temperatures, the daytime highs, plus our lows are even going to be on the higher side. And so with that, a heat warning is in place that may hold well into next week. There's some of the active weather that went through, still a few sprinkles to come through, or maybe a little heavier at times. And then we get back into it tomorrow. I'll have the details on that and that warm day coming up.
Thanks so much, Colette. And we are now learning more about the man who died at the Southwest Detention Center last month. Those who loved him, they want people to know he was a great person who always wanted to help those around him.
I miss him so much. I know. I want him back.
Loved ones are mourning the loss of a 32-year-old man who died at the Windsor jail last month. Serge Gagnon is remembered as a great man, a kind man, who always wanted to help others. In the past, he worked in the mining industry, he was a boxer, and loved ice cream. His partner, Christine McIntyre, is devastated.
Now I have to go every day missing him.
I'm so sorry.
I wanted to grow old with him.
The two of them met while going through a recovery program 3.5 years ago at the Downtown Mission. They've leaned on each other over the years, struggling with homelessness and addiction.
He didn't give up on me, and he showed me this beautiful love that I never thought I'd find. Holding each other, helping each other through the tough nights, sleeping outside when we're forced to be outside because we couldn't be in. Yeah. We were together all the time.
A few years ago, as a result of a verbal altercation between the two of them, a no-contact order was issued to keep them apart. Not able to get it removed, they regularly broke it, often landing in jail over the years. They were arrested for that again last month, but this time the outcome was tragic. Gagnon died while they were both in jail.
I thought to myself, it wasn't my Serge. It wasn't mine. It wasn't him. Could they have been mistaken, but they weren't.
The Office of the Chief Coroner has confirmed it is investigating Gagnon's June 16th death while in custody at the Southwest Detention Center. The cause of death has yet to be officially confirmed, but McIntyre says she suspects it was an overdose. The coroner's office says if a non-natural cause of death is determined, then a mandatory inquest would take place. Ashley Shepley works in the community to support those struggling with addiction and homelessness, and she knew Serge before he died.
I just want people to understand, like, Serge was a really great guy. He was a really great guy out here. Serge was kind. He was very gentle. If you were in a room downstairs and Serge was in the room, you'd be able to point out his positive vibe.
McIntyre has been leaning on Shepley as she grapples with life after this loss. Shepley says the usual grief supports just don't exist when you're homeless.
There's no family support calls coming through, right? And the mission is great. I've seen the support here, the hugs, the compassion. It's amazing that what the workers have been doing for Christine at this time. But I still worry about her, right?
She says people getting arrested for breaking no-contact orders is not uncommon given the circumstances.
It looks bad from the outside. It really does. Oh, well, those two are got together again, you know? But like understanding they're humans. They need connection. And there's not a lot of connection out here. So when you find somebody to connect with that's safer than the rest, then, you know, they're gonna connect because it's survival, right? There's quarrels here and there as a normal couple would have, especially living on the street, especially being stuck in addiction, especially having no support where they need it.
But she says their love for one another was ever present.
You ever want to hear Crazy in Love? I would say Serge is at the top of the list for that one, absolutely.
This past week, Gagnon would have turned 33. For his birthday, Shepley took McIntyre out for ice cream, Gagnon's favorite treat, a way to honor his memory and celebrate his life.
If you love somebody, let them know, because you could wake up tomorrow and they could be gone.
In other news, the trial of a Windsor police officer wrapped up today, and Jason Vio was in the courtroom. Just a warning, the details might be upsetting for some viewers.
On the final day of the sexual assault trial of Ken Price, it was really interesting to hear the judge's comments and views on certain things that occurred during the trial, even though she hasn't made a decision just yet. Now, Price is currently a Windsor Police staff sergeant, and he's on trial facing 4 counts of sexual assault ranging between 2011 and 2015. In at least 2 of those occasions, the complainant says there were officers who witnessed what had happened. Today, Justice Jennifer Myers asked both lawyers why those officers weren't called to testify. The Crown says just because they weren't doesn't mean the complainant isn't telling the truth. And throughout the trial, the defense focused a lot on the fact that the complainant couldn't remember exact dates, years, or even seasons of the alleged assaults. But the judge says when most people recall traumatic experiences, only the most relevant things come to mind. And one of the allegations made against Price is that he aggressively grabbed the complainant's butt in a work hallway. She testified to not reacting when he did that. The judge says, quote, "One would think you would at least flinch." Now, this case really comes down to the credibility and reliability of both the accused who testified on Thursday and the complainant who testified earlier in the week. The judge is set to release her decision on Wednesday. Jason Vio, CBC News, Windsor.
In another case, a judge is deciding on the sentence for a man guilty of killing his wife in Windsor. Dawson Chen is following that story for us, and once again, another warning that the details are disturbing.
It's being described as another horrific case of femicide in Windsor. Ramadan Nizigiyimana has pleaded guilty to a charge of second-degree murder for the killing of his wife. Today, a Superior Court judge heard arguments from Crown and defense lawyers about what they think his sentence should be. In October 2021, Nizigiyimana stabbed his wife multiple times at a gathering of fellow Rwandan refugees in Windsor. At the time, he was already charged with domestic assault and uttering threats. One of his bail conditions was no contact with his wife. The Crown is seeking the heavy end of sentencing, imprisonment for 15 to 18 years before eligibility for parole. But Nizigiyimana's lawyer is emphasizing his mental illness. Since his arrest, he has been diagnosed with schizophrenia. The majority of his custody has been spent in a psychiatric hospital, and he's currently on multiple psychiatric medications. Nizigiyimana, his wife, and their 2 children arrived in Canada as refugees from Rwanda in 2020. Nizigiyimana has struggled in court. Kirundi translators have been required for all proceedings. Today, he was given the opportunity to address the judge about the case. He declined to say anything. The prosecutor reminded the court that communities across Ontario, including in Windsor, Essex, have declared intimate partner violence to be an epidemic. The sentencing date has tentatively been set for September 18th. Until then, Nizigiyimana remains in custody at the Waypoint Center for Mental Health Care. Dawson Chen, CBC News, Windsor.
And we know that these stories can be tough to watch and to listen to. So if you need support, you can reach out to the local 24-hour sexual assault crisis center. That's at 519-253-9667. And if you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, there is help available through centers like Hiatus House. Their 24/7 helpline number is 519-252-7781. Ontario's Environment Minister has apologized for confusion his letter caused after he had asked the federal government to not reintroduce a bill that would ensure clean drinking water for Indigenous communities. The letter was sent back in June by Todd McCarthy and Alberta's Environment Minister, asking their federal counterpart to move away from legislation that would delay project development and undermine competitiveness. They included Bill C-61 as part of their examples, which aims to ensure access to clean drinking water for First Nations communities. In a statement, McCarthy apologized, saying, "The intention of my previous letter was to highlight the urgent need for the federal government to ensure a regulatory environment that fosters economic growth and prosperity for all of Canada, including for First Nations communities while respecting provincial jurisdiction." The statement goes on to say, "We strongly believe this is not an either-or proposition. We can and need to bring clean drinking water to First Nations communities while also bringing the kind of regulatory certainty that attracts investment in businesses and communities, and I apologize for the confusion caused by the previous letter." In other local news, the owners of a Windsor apartment building have been fined $100,000 by a provincial court for failing to provide vital services to their tenants. People living in the 120-unit structure at 1660 Nolet Avenue were forced to evacuate 3 years ago after its central heating system failed, and that triggered a major emergency response by the city, which provided shelter as well as meals, medical care, help with pets, and housing support. CBC News tried to reach the owners of the building for comment, but we were not successful. Stay with us. We will have more on tariffs when we come back. Welcome back. Donald Trump's latest tariff threats have delivered fresh uncertainty for the business community, and it's thrown yet another twist in Canada's trade dispute with the U.S. CBC's Anis Haydari has more on the reaction.
I would say just keep working. It's all going to work out.
Donald Trump after a threat to increase tariffs on Canadian exports to the U.S. His new number, 35% as of August 1st. And not everyone is sure this will work out.
For the business community in Canada, the uncertainty, this constant changing of the goalposts, the unknowns around what will this be, what will it apply to, is quite toxic.
The new higher tariff comes days after another surprise.
I believe the tariff on copper, we're going to make it 50%.
That move had few details, worrying industry, but more information came with these latest threats. A White House administration official tells CBC News they expect goods that comply with the Canada-US-Mexico Free Trade Agreement to be exempt, but add that Trump has not yet made a final decision.
I'm not sure a lot has really changed from where we were. So we'd rather not, see these kinds of announcements like significant tariff increases. We don't think are good for the economies on either side of the border, Canada or the United States.
Trump has also repeatedly brought up Canada's dairy industry and how he'd like to see this country's quota system eliminated, allowing more American products in.
They've got other programs in place. If we opened up completely, which is kind of what Trump and the people that want to get rid of supply management Canada say, oh yeah, just give it all away. Yeah, they'll just swamp us. Oversupply in Wisconsin alone probably supply us, right? They'll just dump it and go.
Dairy Farmers of Canada opposes any changes, saying all major parties expressed support for supply management and stated that it would be off the table in upcoming trade negotiations. The biggest change here between the two countries could be the deadline change. Instead of a July 21st deadline for a tariff deal, now it's August 1st. The Toronto Stock Exchange dropped a bit when it first opened after Trump's letter came out, but it ended the day without any huge losses. So at least as far as those investors are concerned, this could just be another case of Donald Trump postponing an actual tariff with a lot of talk. Anis Hidari, CBC News, Calgary.
The tariff threat is, however, already shrinking, with administration officials saying it would only apply to some goods. As Chris Glover reports from Washington, even the president is lowering the tone.
The most interesting reaction from the United States today is coming directly from the president, now being forced to defend his latest threat against Canada that the states will impose a 35% tariff on goods imported from Canada starting August 1st. A White House official confirming to us that free trade compliant goods would be exempt and energy and potash would remain at 10%. Now, this is the latest threat from Trump. A bit of a surprise, really, especially since trade negotiations had just recently ramped back up. Things had been pretty quiet, and some thought that that was a promising sign, especially since the turmoil last month when Trump terminated trade talks with Canada, calling Ottawa's proposed digital services tax an attack on U.S. tech companies. Ultimately, Carney rescinded the tax at the last minute, and the talks resumed with a deadline of July 21st. Well, that was all upended last night with that explosive letter from Trump to Carney. And today on the White House lawn, Trump continued to argue that the U.S. had been taken advantage of for years, oftentimes, he said, by allies like Canada. Trump also said that he thought it would all work out, but didn't really expand much further. A White House official also underscoring how unfinished all of this is, confirming no final decision by the president had been made, while a Canadian official told CBC News that representatives from both sides had met as recently as yesterday afternoon, just hours before Trump's letter. So now the trade negotiations will continue, albeit with that new deadline of August 1st. Chris Glover, CBC News, Washington.
And we are, of course, continuing to follow this story. So for all of our coverage, you can always go to our website, cbc.ca/Windsor, and also on the CBC News app. We will be right back after the break with your full weekend forecast with Colette Kennedy. Stay with us. Colette Kennedy is back with us now for more on weather. Colette, I hear that there might be some stormy action on the way. So what do we need to know?
Yeah, for sure. And I just want to tell everyone about that kind of risk as we go through the afternoon hours tomorrow and into the evening. And you can see here the moderate risk for some storms and possibly some severe storms does include southwestern Ontario extending up towards Georgian Bay and beyond. Now, in terms of where there would be the highest risk for some spin or tornadic activity, it's actually to the east of Georgian Bay and through northeastern Ontario. Doesn't mean it couldn't happen elsewhere, but I'd be more concerned or thinking about some damaging winds here, some heavy downpours, certainly lightning strikes, and maybe even some small hail, that potential there. So no matter what your plans are, maybe to get into the water perhaps because of all the heat, you just want to be sky aware and stay tuned in to what's going on in case there are some watches or warnings that drop. Our current temperatures, upper 20s in terms of what we're looking at, but what does it feel like? Well, for Windsor, upper 30s, and it's going to get warmer, stickier, muggier than that. So this heat warning isn't just for tomorrow, although tomorrow is going to be a warm one, but through the weekend into next week, perhaps all the way towards about midweek next week, something to note. There's some of the storms from earlier. There's still some activity here pushing towards Lake St. Clair and further north, so it's not over with yet, but they will wind down once the sun sets. But you see this cluster back to the west of us, so this is the boundary that's going to be pushing in tomorrow, and so that's where I'm looking for some of that lift and that risk into the afternoon hours tomorrow. Here's kind of what's going on tonight. That moves through. Then tomorrow we start off dry and sunny, and then it's as we get right towards, I've stopped this at say 3:30, so kind of be paying attention really anytime after 2, I'd say, in case this changes up a little bit, but for some of that development. Then that moves through into Sunday. The forecast is actually looking a little better in terms of there not being as much widespread thunderstorm activity in southwestern Ontario. It looks like the timing is going to change things a little bit. Overnight temperatures, how about this? Another reason for the heat warning is how warm it is through the overnight. So just reminding everyone to stay hydrated, check on everybody, watch out for any kind of signs of heat exhaustion and all of these things for the next several days. If you have any neighbors, especially some older folks that maybe don't have air conditioning or the benefit of that, wanting to be checking on them too. How about 32 for tomorrow? Feeling like we're 40, 41 right on through the period. We're in it for the next at least 5 days here, Katarina.
Yeah, those heat warnings always kicking in right before the weekend.
There you go.
Thank you so much, Colette. Thanks, everyone. Have a fabulous weekend.
Good night.